Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Gunn Show. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, thank you for joining us. For those of you who are tuning in for, I don't know what episode we're on, 20, 30, 40. I mean, we're just pushing through these things. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for continuing to tune in. But to step back for a second, for those of you who are listening for the first time, what we do here on the Gunn Show, which I find incredibly inspiring for not just myself, but the great feedback we're getting from all of this, is that we're doing everything we can to humanize this incredible industry of manufacturing and engineering. And most of us know that the sales guys are great talkers, but a lot of the engineers that we want to connect with, they're humble people that sit back and do their work and don't share that kind of thing a lot unless you pop a beer in front of them, and then we get them talking. So the Gunn Show itself, as you guys, many of you know, but for those of you just stepping in, we're humanizing the industry. We're introducing you to the people behind the products and the creation and everything that's going on. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Let's be equally as proud of the people who are making these planes as the ones flying them, equally as proud of the people making the medical devices as we are the doctors and nurses that are supporting our industry, especially right now. This is the Gunn Show. So today I have someone special here for you, a special treat. His name is Sonny Han. You may have heard of him, founder and CEO at Fulcrum. Sonny is the CEO and founder of Fulcrum, a manufacturing ERP platform dedicated to helping manufacturers build a better future. Now, when you think about Fulcrum, he helped lead them to raise 3.1 million seed round of venture capital in 2020. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's a big number to me, and that sounds incredible. Sonny is also dedicated to delivering a connected future where frictionless manufacturing, production, and supply chains lead to a faster and better product innovations. Now, that sometimes a little bit goes over my head, but thankfully I have Sonny on board today, and he's going to help us explain a little bit of what those big words mean for people like myself. And lastly, before I get him on the horn here and have him start talking, is Sonny has also been on Twin Cities Business, where you may have seen him. And in 2021, 40 Under 40. Sonny is awesome. Sonny, thank you for being a part of the Gunn Show and being here today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, after all of that massive introduction of me blowing your head up, which now maybe you won't be able to walk through doors, but I'm sure your head's been blown up before based on the fact that you are an incredibly intelligent, wise person who has an ERP system that is incredibly successful as well. But it's always good to start at the beginning. How did we get here? Who are you? Shoot, what's your favorite food? I don't even care, but I want to learn more about the person you are before we learn about the person that you are now, that is a 40 under 40 2020. I mean, that's amazing, man. But let's learn a little bit about you. Let's get started about you and who you are.
I came to the country as an immigrant when I was a little kid. When I was 4 years old, my parents came here to get an education, to get their graduate degrees. Moved to Minnesota because my dad was a civil engineer and there's a lot of potholes there. My mom was a computer scientist, and that was where a lot of computer stuff was happening in the late 80s. And there was no, postgraduate programs in communist China. And after the Tiananmen incident, we stayed here. The elder Bush president gave us all blanket amnesty and allowed all these really talented engineers and scientists to stay here. And many of them, like my mom, contributed to the first big innovation boost in the late 80s, early 90s in computers and developing the internet and web technologies. So I think they've done a great job, contributing back to the country for what the country's done for them. And I'm just happy to continue to keep the torch going. But grew up in Minnesota, was just a really awkward nerd my entire youth. I was the captain of the math team in my high school. Not anything super special that I would kind of highlight, but I think people sometimes expect that there's some sort of special or magical manufacturing history that I have, but other than really liking the shop class I took in high school, I really stumbled upon manufacturing a bit accidentally. I did some consulting work during the Great Recession, and a lot of the customers and clients that I worked with were small manufacturers. And so touring shop floors and finding out how things were done, working with CNC shops and job shops and roll formers and die casters and tool and die makers and anodizers and powder coaters and just about every part of that portion of the supply chain. A lot of things that I never read about in school or knew about from anything that I did were just very fascinating to me. So just kind of dedicated my entire career to this particular part of the industry for the last 15, 20 years now. So.
Wow, Sonny. So that's amazing. Coming over at 4 years old, do you have any memory of? Because I honestly, I don't think I can even remember a birthday party before 4 years old. So, do you have any memory of what it was like before you came to? I guess did you start in Minnesota, but before you came to the U.S.?
Yeah, moved to Minnesota right away. My grandfather was a professor in Beijing, in the capital, in China. I remember it being, I don't know, dusty was probably the only memory that I have. I have some memories of like going with my grandma to get soda at the local store, or playing on the playground. My first memory of America is what I'm told was in San Francisco airport. The first meal that I had when I landed was a Pizza Hut pizza, and I thought it was the tastiest thing ever. I still love it, but that was the first thing that I ate. And I remember being fascinated with the flushing toilets. The infrastructure in China was still horrible back then, and apparently my dad just thought that I had a urinary tract infection or whatever, and followed me into the bathroom on the sixth time that I wanted to go, and just saw me flushing the toilets over and over again before coming out. So I don't remember that one, but that's a story that my dad tells all the time.
Well, let's be fair. Most of us have some sort of addiction to pizza, or at least we'll say yes most of the time. Me personally, whether it's, I mean, I worked at Pizza Hut when I was in college, so I actually don't eat that one quite as much as I used to. Let's say anywhere you work, you kind of step away from.
Yeah.
But I am definitely that person like you, where oh man, I'm just not hungry. Well, there's pizza. Okay, I'm hungry again. It's pizza.
Mhm.
And then to your other point, I mean, what child is not fascinated by a toilet? And how many toilets get clogged up because of the kids sneaking in there and throwing toys or whatever it might be, just to watch it spin in a circle and go down? I'd like to talk a little bit about your schooling, because you mentioned that um, you were captain of the math team, and then you kind of moved quickly past that into nothing really notable. I will respectfully disagree with you. I would love to have been captain of my math team. I could barely get past algebra and geometry, for crying out loud. So hearing you say that, to me as an outsider, I mean, maybe when I was in high school, I would have been the guy that pointed at you and be like, "Ah, Sonny, you're a nerd." But now as an adult, I go, "Man, I wish I could have been that guy. I wish I was that good at math." What was that like?
I think it was just luck, to be quite honest. Here in Minnesota, there at the University of Minnesota, there was a math program that was specifically designed for youth. So in fourth grade, I took a test and started taking math at the University of Minnesota, and basically finished up all of undergraduate math by the time I was a sophomore in high school. So a lot of that was because that program existed. If I lived somewhere where there was no opportunity for me to like have those professors teach me, I would not be as advanced at that time as I actually was. So I obviously have been blessed with having some natural talent to be able to even participate in those programs. But I think that more programs like that should exist, and I think there's a lot of potential that's out there that we can invest in, and from an education standpoint and a resource standpoint. But really, if you think about it, in the 1990s, early 2000s, for programs like that to have already existed, something pretty special, and one of the only ones in the entire country. So again, my parents didn't choose to move here because of that, but just out of the luck of the draw, those programs were available. And I went to a charter school that was funded by the state of Minnesota, that was for gifted and talented kids, and we had some really great teachers there as well. So a lot of what I've learned, the way that I think, how hard I work, is because of what those teachers taught me. Nothing that I really just was born with. So more than slightly grateful for all those people, those humans that came in contact with me throughout my life influenced me in the right way. So.
Well, I appreciate your humbleness, and I value someone that has as much wisdom and intelligence as you do to be equally as kind and humble. So let me just say thank you for being that type of person. But let's move into quickly. As you were growing up and knowing the story of coming over from China, did you feel like you had an obligation? Did your parents convey a message to you that you had to push to always be your very best, whether it be in mathematics or whatever? Was there a push for success within your household, or was that something that you just kind of were innately, kind of went into in school and you enjoyed it yourself?
I think there were things that I should have worked harder at that I didn't. I don't know. There is a trait about me that might be good and might be bad. We maybe refer to it as industriousness or something. Like if you put me in a room with a bunch of Legos, I'm not just going to sit there and stare at it. I'm going to do something with them, right? Like there's some part of me that just doesn't like to stay still in that way. But the desire to work hard is really rewarded by the benefit of it. I think. I think it's intrinsic. The more I read, the more I know, the better I think, the more I do, the better I get at things. I do a lot of cooking, and there's a lot of really fast improvement that you can see. I know a lot of my friends that have recently gotten into like biking or running. You can measure yourself getting better with the work that you put in. So I think one of the greatest human experiences is being able to see yourself get better with the work that you put in. And I think that for me, it was just, I think sometime in the middle of high school, actually towards the end of high school, some classes were easier for me than for other kids. And it took a little bit of time to realize that it isn't the challenges that adults and other people put in front of me that really should challenge me. I really need to find another motor, another avenue for me to put my attention and my time on that will grow me as a person. So, all throughout my career, all throughout college, all throughout my entire life, from that point forward, basically, I've always tried to add a few other layers of growth, whether it be hobbies like cooking or, reading more and doing more, digging into, deep physics and math concepts, or figuring out how to communicate with people and how to sell a software product, or how to group a bunch of really talented and smart people together and get them to work with each other. None of those things were taught to me as a kid, but without the amount of time that I've spent reading and developing myself, I don't think I would have as good of answers or as much thoughtfulness there as I do now. So no, I don't think that there's my parents pressured me to work hard in areas that I never had any interest in. But I think that the real hard work and the real motivation that I have mostly just comes from selfishness. Like I want to be better. I want to be better at whatever I do. So.
Yeah, oftentimes that person in the mirror can be our biggest advocate and our biggest demon, can't they?
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned Legos, so I'm just going to say this for maybe, manifestation. I hope to see you on Lego Masters one day. That would be fun. I think you'd be great at it. Two, I'm curious that coming from China, I would imagine your parents' English isn't their first language, which would make me believe that English is also not yours, and yet you speak better English than I do. And thirdly, you mentioned a lot of successes, but you also said I wasn't great at everything. Can you talk a little bit about some of the struggles? Because we all have them, but we always focus on the highlights of our lives. Oh, I did this and I was so successful, and I kicked butt in this and whatever it might be. But it sometimes it's difficult to share some of the hardships. However, we all go through hardships, and connecting with people out there listening right now, they're going to go, I have them too. I'm so grateful that Sonny shared some of his, some of the difficulties that he's went through, and yet he's, the CEO and founder of Fulcrum, which is an incredible ERP system that was, whatever it might be, as far as your journey coming up, that had the difficulties as well. Just a story, maybe two stories, totally up to you, but
Sure.
some of that.
No, I think that's the best learnings we have in life are from those failures, right? So, I mean, from a contextual standpoint, even though I was the captain or whatever, I was never first place. I was always second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever it may be in the state. From an individual contribution standpoint, I would, with some of the people that I competed against, I was close. With some other people, I wasn't even close. And so, maybe without a lot of context, you couldn't tell the difference between me and this other person, but I could, right? I could definitely tell just how much more talent that person had. And I think being in those environments and competing with the very best, it made me realize just how much more hard work I needed to put in, right? I don't have enough natural talent to be the best without trying. So I think those kind of small, consistent, constant failures of not making it and being the best, part of that, like you said, looking yourself in the mirror, sometimes you can be really down on yourself and just say that you'll never make it. But I think over time, realizing that I could improve with harder work and that I could work harder than them, and that there is a lot more work that you can do than other people, that the average person works really hard, but there's always another gear that you can find. I think that was a good lesson to learn from that. But a lot of the biggest failures in my life have been from underappreciating the value of something. Um, One of the stories that is probably the most painful is when I started the company, I started with two of my best friends, and neither of them are part of the business anymore. The biggest lesson that I learned throughout that entire process was that being honest is very different than telling the truth. I think that there were a lot of things that I hide from myself. I still do now. I think we all do, right? And it helps us paint an image of who we are that might not be completely true all the time. And it's not like we're being dishonest, but it's sometimes it's a coping mechanism to get us to move forward a little bit more, right? We sometimes don't look in the mirror if we've gained a little bit of weight, or we don't look at our test scores if we didn't do very well. We don't look at our revenue if it's flat or whatever it may be. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to have those momentary breaches of a delusion or just avoiding some of the things that happen to us. But when you have partners and you have other people, I think that you have less of that luxury. I think you have to be able to be really blunt and direct and confronting things. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that trying to please everyone is going to make it so that you don't please anyone. And the three of us, we all had somewhat to quite different ideas on how to manage the team, on how to grow the company, on how to build the product and where to go. And as the guy that was in charge of everything, I refused to make a decision to say, no, you're right and you're wrong, or I agree with you and not you, and this is where I want to go. And I tried to do both, and it ended up being that neither got what they wanted. So I think a really big lesson is to, and one that I don't think I could have learned other than through that failure, right? But a lesson that I really carry with me right now, every single day is, am I trying to please people and trying to do what they think that they want now, or am I doing the right thing for the business, the right thing for the customer, the right thing for the team and for the employees and for the product? And that's harder than you might think when you work with somebody, or you know somebody for a long time and you work with them for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You develop a bond that's deeper than just being a coworker. And sometimes you need to make a choice that hurts somebody that you really care about in a lot of different ways, but it's the right decision. And what I found is that it's not as scary once you do it a few, 2 or 3 times, and you explain yourself and you tell them the why and you give them the context. It never had a problem with it. But even still, even though I know that that's the right thing to do, very much more often than not, I still get sweaty palms and I feel, anxious about having those conversations. So a lesson that I'm continuing to learn every single week, but probably the deepest failure that I have as an entrepreneur, and also the most important lesson I've learned so far.
Very, very well said, Sonny. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can empathize. I've also had a business or two and lost friends through dissolving those businesses, and it hurts, right? It hurts more than losing the business itself, in my opinion. And yeah, we relaunched it and created success, but there's a deep friendship that was lost probably forever. And I'd love for that to change. But Sonny, what your story, it touches me in such a way that I can certainly empathize and feel that pain. You also mentioned, which I think is incredibly valuable, is you mentioned, that sometimes it's difficult to look at ourselves in the mirror and we hide certain things from ourselves. Through lots of reading and studying and looking at my own self in the mirror, I've learned that that's kind of like our shadow version of ourselves, and there are a million different perspectives of who we are based on how somebody sees us and how we see ourselves, which to me is fascinating because to myself, when I look at myself, I go, this is what I like. This is the part I'm kind of hiding from myself. Okay, maybe I can bring that to light and become friends with it. But I've also had a conversation with a stranger and they see me as a completely different person, as another time where I've maybe been at a party and I've been that idiot at the party and that person sees me as, and then the very strict business person, and then the podcast. So there's all these different perspectives. And at the end of the day, I think we have to all look in the mirror and just, know that we're being the best versions of ourselves, and we're trying to be that for ourselves, right? It's just because nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. There's going to be a million opinions. Some are going to be great. Some are going to be awful. But if we look in the mirror at the end of the day and we go, I value you. It's almost like, do you remember that old Saturday Night Live Michael Jordan thing where he looks at himself and goes, you're good enough, you're strong enough, and doggone it, people like you. It's kind of like that, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Fulcrum now, if you don't mind. And I'd like to start with just a general bird's eye view of what an ERP system is and how it helps companies, because some people still don't know that. And it's important, in my opinion, to start there. And then after that, let's talk about the details of how Fulcrum was created and how it's different from ERP as a whole, but how it can really be powerful on how you've created it. I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, and every single business, when they get to a large enough size, feels some level of disorganization and difficulty in trying to manage the data that's in their business, right? There's sales orders and purchase orders and jobs, and when do I do them, and which operation comes first, and what's the bomb and routing, what changes they have, and what revisions have the customer made, and what machines can do it, and what humans can work those machines, and how many copies of this tooling do I have, or how many orders do we think we're going to get? Is this a custom order or not? And what are the quality control measurements that we need to take? It's just data and data and data and data, and it's all useful, but it ends up oftentimes just being in stacks of paper somewhere in a filing cabinet. And I'd be willing to bet that 99% of all of the manufacturers that are out there that are listening have some forest of filing cabinets somewhere that have a bunch of data, or maybe they've taken the effort to scan all of that stuff, but fundamentally, we just have all this information everywhere. And historically speaking, manufacturing has been incredibly fascinating in that it's basically the first industry that's ever adopted most big technologies. In the software world, we talk about the Lean Startup is a really big book that people read, and we use Kanban boards to manage our work, and we have Agile, and we have Scrum, and all these things that we talk about, and Six Sigma measurements. And people don't realize often that all of these systems came from manufacturing. All of this was developed as a way to get humans to do the right work at the right time as quickly as possible. And it was so good and so insightful that it was very easily transformative for other industries as well. I think because it's talked about so much in software, a lot of times when we talk to new employees that just come on board, this history lesson is something that might be a little bit, culty or something like that. But I think it's really important for people to realize, it wasn't invented for software engineers. It was just co-opted by them. And there's some truth, there's some principle knowledge inside there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as transitive between different industries, right? So I think that that's really an important thing to anchor the definition of an ERP on, because the first computers basically that were commercialized in a large way, in a profitable way for a lot of computer manufacturers, were mainframe systems to drive ERP systems. Some of the smallest PC boards that were made and control systems were for CNC machines, right? And so the manufacturing industry for the longest time has not only just been in lock and step with computer software and computer hardware, it was pushing the industry forward even in the late 80s when I arrived in this country, all the way probably until the mid 90s. And for whatever reason, probably the advent of the internet and a bunch of web technologies and consumer software products and things like that, at that point in time, there was a little bit of a divide, right? And what's really happened is that to me, in my perspective, we've had all these innovations in 3D printing, moving from single axis or 2-axis CNC machines to 5-axis CNC machines. There's pallet systems out there now. There's, Universal Robotics has robots that can automatically pull stuff off for you that you can program really easily using a really crazy cool tablet. And there's so many advances in all these different places. And yet this notion of an ERP, everybody thinks of it in a certain way, but it hasn't changed since 1978. And really what most people think about when they think about an ERP is that it's a database. It's you put your orders in, maybe you put your BOM and routing in, and it tells you what to order. It tries and fails at scheduling and doesn't do very well. And you have to have this discipline of getting your people to write stuff on paper and then having somebody in the office then transcribe it into a computer system. And if you do it wrong, then the employee feels stupid that they didn't get it. And there's this fear of like pressing submit and putting the information in because you don't know if it's going to work or not. And there's always that 1 or 2 people in the office that are just whizzes at the system, and they make you feel insufficient about yourself, and it's hard to learn. And there's this big manual that was left by some consultant 2 decades ago, and you're trying to read it and it's all dusty. And so that's I think what the vast majority of the ERP experience is in the world right now. And I don't think that it has to be like that. So before we talk about what Fulcrum is doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it, I think it's important to ground ourselves in kind of that history and a little bit of reverence for how much these two industries, software, hardware, and manufacturing have been intertwined with each other. And I think to appreciate just how much they've helped each other, right? So
I think that was very well explained, and thank you for sharing that. So let's do a little bit more about Fulcrum. In particular, if I own a machine shop and I am definitely looking at some ERPs, give me your 5-second sales pitch.
Well, first of all, we tell all of our salespeople and we tell all of our engineers who many software companies don't quote unquote allow their engineers to talk to customers, but we really have embraced this concept of none of us have owned manufacturing facilities. We're primarily technologists, and we're primarily product managers, and we're primarily designers, and we design things really well, we engineer things really well, we're super clever with all those things. But like we just had the entire company together for a company meeting a month ago, and one day every single employee went to some manufacturing facility to watch some process happen and tour some shop and get that experience. So for us, the first and foremost thing is, it might be annoying, but if I'm talking to you as a customer and you're talking to one of our account executives, they're going to be asking you a shitload of questions. They're going to be asking you about your story and who started the business and how long has it been in business and what work centers you have and where are your constraints and what types of customers you work with. Do you have blanket orders? How frequently do they change, or does the customer supply the tooling or the material? And there's so many questions because so many businesses are so different, and so many businesses, some of them have their own powder coating center, some of them don't because they think it's dirty. Some people have wire EDM and some people do not. And so there's just this amazingly diverse shape to how all these different businesses can look. And the first question at the end of all that entire, interview, if you will, is, can we even do anything to provide you value? If you're managing your shop really well and everything is going great, there's oftentimes no need to disrupt that with adding new software or changing your software. So if we're not able to deliver value to you, if there's nothing that we can do that justifies that effort, we shouldn't do business together. But if there is, if we can help you automate the pattern of your ordering and when to order and automatically ingest all this information and tell you what to do today so that your schedule is as high of throughput as possible, if you are hiring new people and younger people and they're frustrated with old software that they can't use, if you're having a hard time hiring and putting people in place and exciting them to come to work, if you need people to work remotely because of COVID, if you need to have a better insight to real-time data on the shop floor, and you want not paper but something digital to be the medium so you can look at it, like you can look at your bank account live right now, right? And before, there was a member of your family and a clerical person at a bank manually doing all that as well. But now all that's automated, and we can see the balance in our bank account. And nobody knows how to balance their checkbook anymore because of that, and they don't need to. Very similar to that, we can deliver that type of insight and real-time automation to our customers as well. So depending on what we think the impact is going to be, if we switch this new system that's cloud-based, that's automated, that's pretty, that's easy to use, all that stuff is marketing stuff. And you know, my VP marketing is going to be mad at me for throwing him under the bus a little bit. But for me, what is really core to the entire equation is, does all this fancy new technology, does it help you? Does it make your business better? And if it does, we'd be happy to work with you, and be really disappointed if you don't work with us. But if it isn't, you know, all we can do in life is say what we can give and what we want. And if there is no match, there is no match. So
well said, Sonny. Very well said. So I walk into machine shops around the world all the time, as you may know, the audience knows. And some people have different types of systems, whether it be ERP or machine metrics or, you know, whatever they feel best. And sometimes, a lot of times, a combination, you know, companies out there all over the place. And a question that gets asked a lot in these machine shops that don't have it are, who do I go with and why? Which I think you've explained really well and done a great job. But also a question gets asked a lot, or gets mentioned a lot, is, I don't need it because I'm too small, or you know, something. So I guess what my point is at what point is too small, and is there a too big when it comes to the implementation of an ERP system?
I think the answer to that is, and I'm not trying to be purposely vague, but it's cultural, right? I think one of the reasons why really, really big manufacturers, and we work with some Fortune 500 ones and some really big billion-dollar manufacturing facilities, but we're usually managing some small part of their shop. We're not managing the entire operations. But as some of your customers, or sorry, some of your audience members know, as you grow, layers of hierarchy and politics and the you know, the some of the children of the owners that are in the business that maybe don't know what they're talking about, and other members of the team that really do know what they're talking about, they might butt heads, and there's all of this kind of human grossness that's built on top of oftentimes really clean, really well maintained, really well groomed shops that, you know, have very little scrap anywhere, that's well swept and like well organized. You know, you see this kind of juxtaposition between how precisely the machine shop is running versus, you know, how messy and human the business side is running. I think oftentimes when you get to a really, really big size, those politics, those hierarchies, that can get in the way with working with us. Different than most ERP systems, we don't have a huge $1 million, $2 million, even $100,000 cost to you to get started, to have a consultant to work through those politics and to customize everything to fit everybody's needs. Our goal is to say, you know, we can do a lot of things really well. And because we can make the software super good in a way that isn't just like basically a custom piece of software for everyone, we can update our software really quickly and continue to deliver value to everybody. And that's really important to us. And it's really important to our best and most loyal customers. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to protect the rate of innovation in which we're delivering value. But that means that if you want a piece of software that is basically custom software built for sales to be sales and for engineering to be engineering, because we can't reconcile the differences between those groups, and that usually happens when you have thousands and thousands of employees. We're just not set up to deal with that, at least not right now. On the too small side, if we're going to try to be Goldilocks here, if you have two people and, you know, three machines, and you can just talk to each other every day and share that information, there's really nothing to automate. You're probably really smart people. You probably know a lot about what you're doing. You probably left some other machine shop. You're probably the best machinist that was there. You probably know your machines in and out. You know tool and die makers. You know your customers. You probably don't have that many orders, and you probably have one customer that's really big that's giving you anxiety that if they go away, you're out of business. And you have a very different set of problems that you're dealing with, and problems that we hope we can solve for you in the future when we create this network of manufacturing to help connect you with more customers. But we're not quite there yet. So there's probably a very low likelihood that we can deliver value to you if that's the case. So.
Well, I like that answer a lot, Sonny, and it's an honest answer, and that's the best part about it. And you're right. The machine shops that I walk into that are 1, 2, 3 people, they did, run a shop before or had the confidence enough that what they were doing that they could start their own. And I see the same thing every day. So very well said. So now that we've talked a little bit about who you are, a little bit about what ERP is, and a little bit about Fulcrum itself, for those people who are listening, and I'm sure there's bunches of them that are curious, what are your website socials? How can we find you to touch base and learn more about how to get in touch with you and find out more about your product?
Yeah, fulcrumpro.com is where you should go to see our product. We do this thing that's very different than the market, but we show our software on our product. You can see screenshots of what the product looks like right on our website. If you want to you don't need to book a demo to do that. If you're interested, you can absolutely book a demo, but we're very transparent, very open book. Everything's out there. And I want to rephrase my last answer a little bit. We do have a lot of customers that are a few, like 1 or 2 or 3 person shops, but they're not using a lot of the automation. The pricing that they get is very cheap. We try to make it very affordable. It's still very easy for them to use just the core order management stuff, but most of the super cool innovations, other than the real-time data, just they're not big enough to really gain a lot of value from that. And so they're not priced the same as the rest of our customers. So I don't want to denigrate or sideline anybody who's out there that can use the software really valuably. So one other thing that I want to offer too is on any podcast, any listeners of any podcast that I've been on, my email is sunny like the weather, SUNNY @fulcrumpro.com. You can email me directly anytime if you have a question about what your OEE should be, or what your run rates should be, or how to price your labor rates versus utilization rates, or if you want help with some complex spreadsheet that you broke. I'm always happy to help anybody who's listening to a podcast that I've been on. So you can reach out to me directly.
Very much appreciated. And before I let you go, and this question is going to be a bit long-winded because we have not prepared for it. And don't worry, mentally, I know you're prepared. You're very well spoken, but ahead of time, I didn't let you know, hey, you know what questions I'm going to ask? No, this is all transparent, authentic. It's back and forth. Sonny, you are very well spoken. You mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that, having conversations with people and, that side of things was something that you wanted to work on. Let me just say, you are possibly a better conversationalist than I am, and it's my job to be a conversationalist. So very well done on that aspect.
Appreciate it.
But what I'd like to kind of close this podcast out with is something I close all of my podcasts out with is advice, and you can direct it to whoever you want. Oftentimes, I'm working with a machinist or a tool guy or something like that, and so it's directed toward other machinists, whether it be someone who wants to get into the industry, someone who is looking to grow within the industry, or maybe someone who's become stagnant in the industry and is looking for motivation. However, with your really diverse background and unique perspective on so many subjects, I'm going to leave it wide open. And I don't care which topic or what people you talk to when it comes to advice. But if we can have the wisdom from Sunny Hand, the CEO and founder of Fulcrum, working so hard, and top 40 under 40, I would love to hear a bit of your wisdom that you could share with our audience.
I think oftentimes as an individual, whether you're running a business or an employee in a business, whether you have dreams and hopes to do something different, the world can seem really small these days because you're so exposed to everything that's happening. And you might think, how important can I possibly be when there's these global supply chains and huge factories that don't pay their workers in China, and all this outsourcing that's happening, and how complex this is, and I'd never be able to work with a Boeing or never be able to work with a big Fortune 500 company. I think that is really not the truth. There's fewer people than you would ever expect that are out there trying to do cool new things. When I started the company, I'd waited for 3 years expecting someone else to start the same company, someone else to have built a Fulcrum with a different name, and it just never happened. And this entire time, there have been other people that are doing something similar, but very few people have taken the risk. Maybe they have the exact same idea, but very few people are in a position where they're able to even take a risk. I moved into my parents' basement when I started the business, and not everybody has a parents' basement to move into. So I think that the only issue that can possibly befall you is that you fail and that you look a little embarrassed, and you have to dust yourself off and get up and either try again or do something different. But at some point in time, you have to decide whether or not you're the person that wants to take those risks. And the best wisdom that I can give you is that whatever the risk that you're considering, it's almost certainly not as bad as you think. There are a few extremely psychopathic gamblers out there that are also entrepreneurs that take risks and things like that out there. But in my life, in all the people that I've met, especially in manufacturing, most everybody that's doing the cool things are very conservative, well thought out, and intelligent people. And I think that if we collectively all push a little bit harder and did a little bit more and put our necks out there a little bit longer, we'd be able to make huge changes to how manufacturing works here in the United States. So,
Well, I will applaud you, Sonny. Very, very well said. And the last thing, very last thing, I keep saying the last thing, but the very last thing is I'd be honored to do a lunch, dinner, or an in-person session of filming with you at some point. I have some great partners in the Minnesota, Minneapolis area, Matt Surr being one of them. And if there's ever an opportunity where we can get together, I would love to learn even more from you and sit down with you and maybe have a bite of Pizza Hut pizza or whatever it is that you'd like to have when I get there.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, Sonny, thank you so much. For everyone who's listening, this is Sonny Han, CEO and founder of Fulcrum. Reach out to him. He is incredible. Even if you're just going to pick his brain, this guy is amazing. So thank you all for listening. Again, this is the Gunn Show, and we're doing everything we can to humanize this industry, to connect with all of you, whatever age it might be. We have skills gaps that we need to fill. Automation is the first step. Education is another one. But we are getting there, and we are getting there quickly. So share with your friends, share with your colleagues. I have a guy cutting grass outside my window right now, but that's how you know this is real. So thank you all for listening. And Sonny, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.